Quite welcome. You're watching World Today, your window to the world on DD India, which will be from here on your daily window to the world. Will get you the top international stories. Well, today, this evening, the report, terrorist and other militant groups in Pakistan, released by the research wing of the US Congress, maintains that Pakistan-based terror groups could be broadly categorized into 5 types. The 5 types are globally oriented, Afghanistan-oriented, India and Kashmir oriented, domestically oriented and sectarian oriented as well. That's big news. We get you the detailed explainer of the report, especially in the light of the big confession coming from a Pakistani terrorist, once again exposing Pakistan's terror nexus. Well, this Pakistani terrorist was captured alive by the Indian Armed Forces during a live encounter in Uri sector in Jammu and Kashmir. All that and much more, but first up on World Today, here is a quick look at the headlines. A Pakistani terrorist captured alive by the Indian Army during a live encounter in Jammu Kashmir's Uri confesses his association with Lashkar-e-Taiba and the role of Pakistani handlers. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party votes to pick a new leader today. Tight 4-cornered race on. Winner is all about, but is sure to be Japan's next Prime Minister. China witnesses major power supply crisis. Goldsmith Sachs estimates that 44% of China's industrial activity has been hit by the power shortages. In other big news, North Korea confirms projectile fired off its east coast on Tuesday as newly developed hypersonic missile, calls on the US and South Korea to scrap their double standards on weapons programs to restart diplomatic talks. Lionel Messi scores his first goal for the PSG to beat Manchester City in an enthralling Champions League group game. Debutant Sheriff Tiraspol upstages 13-time European champions Real Madrid. Well, on World Today, the big news. Well, Pakistan's terror nexus is yet again exposed. In a massive revelation, a 19-year-old captured terrorist identified as Ali Babar Patra has confessed about his association with Lashkar-e-Taiba and the role of Pakistani handlers. He further stated that he was trained by Pakistani army and he was also trained by ISI. Speaking to reporters, the captured terrorist revealed that he was given financial help of 25,000 for his mother's medical treatment. Earlier, he had said that the Pakistan army was helping terrorists infiltrate Jammu and Kashmir for violence and their personal benefits by spreading misinformation and brainwashing the youth. His confession came after he was captured live by the Indian army in Jammu Kashmir's Uri. Earlier, only on Tuesday, the Indian Army had foiled a major infiltration bid along the line of control by capturing alive a Pakistani terrorist who was trying to sneak into Kashmir along with the several other terrorists of Lashkar-e-Taiba or LET. It has also killed 7 of the terrorists in an operation that lasted for around 10 days. The 19-year-old terrorist, identified as Ali Babar Patra of Dipalpur in Okara district of Pakistan's Punjab province, was taken into custody by the Indian Army, which allowed him to surrender amidst intense gunfire being resorted to by his associates. Major General Birendra Watts, General Officer Commander of 19 Infantry Division, has said Patra was allowed to surrender after he pleaded for life. The Major General also maintained altogether 7 terrorists were killed while Patra was captured alive. Meanwhile, United States Congress report says at least 12 groups have been designated as foreign terrorist organizations by the United States that are based in Pakistan. They include 5 that are India-centric, according to the latest congressional report on terrorism. The report, Terrorist and Other Militant Groups in Pakistan, that's the title of the report, was released by the research wing of the US Congress. It also says Pakistan-based groups could be broadly categorized into 5 types, 5 categories: globally oriented, Afghanistan oriented, India and Kashmir oriented, domestically oriented, as well as sectarian oriented. In fact, the prominent India-centric groups include, according to the report, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Harkatul-Jihad, Islami and Hizbul Mujahideen. We're going to take a very short breather here. When we come back, we have a detailed explainer on the report released by US Congress, the highlights of that report, which once again puts Pakistan's support to terror pretty much officially on record. We'll be back after a short break.
Events take shape. We get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
इंडिया
माँ हिंदी हस्ती
हिंदियान
सलाम हिंदुस्तान
We are India.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. As the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation, do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask up, India.
It's a report on terrorism which actually nails Pakistan's role. Let's roll in the Pak-sponsored terror, which according to the report has been divided into categories. Into groups of 5. And what are these 5 groups? They are globally oriented, identified as Afghanistan oriented, India oriented, India and Kashmir oriented to be more specific, domestically oriented as well as sectarian oriented as well. This report further says that Pakistan is home to at least 12 groups designated as foreign terrorist organization. Pakistan roles once again clear. According to the report, 5 of them are being India-centric, basically operating or targeting India, like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. US officials have also identified, those who have researched for this report, identified Pakistan as a base of terror operations. That's big. It further says that Pakistan is base for numerous armed and non-state militant groups, and some of which have existed since 1980. So it also basically traces the origin of these groups. It further states that Pakistan continued to serve as a safe haven for certain regionally focused terrorist groups, quote unquote. It further states that Pakistan allowed these groups targeting Afghanistan as well as groups targeting India to operate from its own territory. The US Department of State report on terror talks about, and I quote, major attacks in India. It says major attacks in India were planned by Pakistan-based terror groups. Can Pakistan deny it? What were these terror groups? Lashkar-e-Taiba or LET was formed in the late 1980s in the Pakistan. That's what it says. And it also says that LET was designated as a foreign terrorist organization way back in 2001. And LET was also, according to the report, responsible for major 2008 terror attack in Mumbai in India. making their role clear. India, as well as numerous other high-profile attacks, were also planned by LET, according to this report. Jaish-e-Mohammed, it says, was founded in 2000 by Kashmiri militant leader Masood Azhar. His name figures in that report. It talks about Harkatul Jihad Islami, or Huji, directed its efforts towards India. Now, it says Huji today operates not only in Afghanistan, it operates in Pakistan, it operates in Bangladesh, and it also operates in India. It further states that Huji seeks annexation of Kashmir into Pakistan, and Hizbul Mujahideen. Let's move on. It talks about Hizbul Mujahideen, how it was formed in 1989, and how Hizbul Mujahideen terror outfit, the wing of Pakistan's largest Islamist political party, was actually a terror group operating from Pakistan, which also includes Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has a massive mention in that report. It says Al-Qaeda operated primarily from the former federally administered tribal areas and also from Karachi. Can Pakistan explain this? Karachi as well as operated from Afghanistan. It says Islamabad has yet to act or perhaps take any sort of decisive action against these terror groups, especially targeting India and Afghanistan, these terror groups. It further states that Pakistan's government and military, they acted inconsistently, quote unquote, inconsistently with respect to the terrorist safe havens throughout the country. So Pakistan government, the action or the inaction has been questioned. It further states that authorities did not take sufficient action to stop these terror groups and individuals from openly operating in the country. Other terrorist groups inside Pakistan, according to the report, are all these that you see on your screen. Let's name them one by one. Islamic State Khorasan Province, or ISKP, or ISK as it is known, the Afghan Taliban, the Haqqani Network, one of the stakeholders of government formation in Taliban in Afghanistan. It talks about Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. It talks about Baluchistan Liberation Army, or BLA. It also has named and nailed Jundala Aka Jaish al-Adal Sipahi-e-Sahaba Pakistan. It also says Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, one of the other arms terror outfits promoted by Pakistan, mentions in this report. And we will talk more about the developments, important developments, in the light of the confession that has come from the Pakistan-based terrorist captured live by Indian Army. It's a massive breakthrough. On the other side, we will be joined by former envoy to Pakistan and a very senior diplomat. Please stay with us on World Today.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
And Ambassador Parthasarathy is here with us on World Today. Thank you very much, sir. Ambassador Parthasarathy, such a pleasure having you on the show, sir. So today, the talking point being US Congress report how it exposes Pakistan as terror factory. Well, I'm sure you know that it says that Pakistan is home to 12 terror outfits. I'm going to come to that, quoting the Congressional Research Service report on terror. We're going to play the highlights on our screens as well. But the confession, Ambassador Parthasarathy, that has come from the Pakistani terrorists captured alive. Not that we didn't know about it, but then now it's official on record. Can Pakistan deny this? First of all, how big do you see this as a breakthrough for our forces, for our Indian armed forces, as well as for our agencies?
Well, Pakistan is pretty blasé about these things. We caught Ajmal Kasab during that attack on Mumbai, the terrorist attack by the Lashkar-e-Taiba, in which more than 150 people died. And he was a Pakistan national, and yet it was denied. So the denial will continue, but there is an important difference. Nobody believes Pakistan
anymore.
Least of all the Americans and the US Congress, which are now persuaded, rather late in the day, if I may say, that Pakistan has played a double game, pretending to.
Ambassador Parthasarathy? Well, let's try and reconnect with Ambassador Parthasarathy. Meanwhile, let's once again take a look at the report which names and nails Pakistan as home to at least 12 terror outfits. These 12 terror outfits have been actually identified in the reports, including Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Taiba. It says it identifies Pakistan as a base for numerous armed and non-state militant groups operating freely on Pakistani soil, further stating that some of these terror outfits have been existing way back in 1980s. That's when it all started, and Pakistani government's inaction has also been exposed. And Ambassador Parthasarathy, yes sir, you're there with us. Please continue. You were basically trying to explain what is the difference between capturing Kasab and the way the case went on and capturing Patra.
At that time, the United States was not willing to admit that this was happening, because it needed Pakistani support for its forthcoming Afghanistan operation. So I think now it's clear the United States and the UN are determined to act. You already have action in the Financial Action Task Force. But when the congressional report is completed and the full range of Pakistani involvement, not just in terrorism against India, because many of these groups have had links in faraway places. They have operated throughout Central Asia. They were all put together to function in Pakistan from the early days in the 1990s. So the important thing, and which the current capture proves, is that the Lashkar-e-Taiba, though it has now been operating in Afghanistan and along with the Jaish-e-Mohammed against the Americans, we had Lashkar and Jaish not only attacking Americans but also attacking our embassy and consulates there. So that is going to be exposed, and Pakistan cannot easily get away from it.
Okay.
The Lashkar-Jaish Afghanistan link.
Okay.
Not to speak of the Taliban link with in all this.
Yes.
So it's all terrorists together. One big home for terrorists. And we've acted this time. Right now they're going to find it tough because the border is better protected. Infiltration can be in small numbers. And we have taken them out pretty fast, especially the last 2 years after the constitutional amendment. The action against the terrorists has been firm. There's no political hassles, nothing. And the Pakistanis are paying the price. Whether it was Kasab, who came as an uneducated fellow along with the Lashkar-e-Taiba in the 1990s, or whether it is now when we are capturing. But what I expect, and I think I should caution you as an international channel, is that the danger is now the Haqqani network.
Yes.
The Pakistani groups, the
Afghanistan.
Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, function in very close cooperation with the Afghan groups. And, the Haqqani network, don't forget, the head of the Haqqani network is the interior minister of Taliban-ruled Pakistan, Sirajuddin Haqqani. So
Yes.
you're going to have Indian terrorist groups now operating also with the Taliban, and led by no less than the interior minister of Taliban-ruled Afghanistan, involved in this. And I think by summer, when the snow starts melting, we should be prepared for more of that.
Okay.
But now there's a very clear Taliban, Lashkar, Jaish nexus.
Yes. Did we actually wait, or, I mean, were we, when I say we, I don't mean only India, I mean the rest of the world. We were waiting to actually convince United States at their convenience, because now the US Department of State has come up with this very exhaustive dossier which has Pakistan this, Pakistan that, Pakistan, they've named more than, I mean, there are at least 12 terror groups, out of which most of them figured when Taliban was simmering with tension, you know. Yes, exactly. I think you have preempted my question. So now, certainly Blinken talks tough, so-called tough on Pakistan, then they release this report. Of course, our armed forces have had a massive breakthrough, and India was always there with the proof, but we were actually waiting for US to believe. FATF has been there, grey list has been there, we've been talking about it, but there has been no deterrent, no action on ground.
Well, it did not suit American interests at that point in time, because they were convinced that they needed Pakistan's support for their operations in Afghanistan. They knew everything that was happening and they covered it up.
Covered it up, yes.
They realized that the truth has to come out, and it's coming out. But this was truth they've known for the last 30 years. And the Americans always fudged this, because I don't blame them. They had perhaps to depend on Pakistan for support for their Afghan operations, which in the end, what happened?
Yes.
They were thrown out when they left. They left in very humiliating conditions.
Yes.
And where you had Pakistan-oriented groups merely helping the Taliban throughout Afghanistan in their final offensive against the Ghani government.
Okay. So the capturing alive of Patra, do you think that has once again consolidated India's position anti-terror? Our Prime Minister spoke tough at the UNGA. He minced no words. And now again there's a proof.
Well, let me put it this way. America acts when it suits its interests.
Yes.
Right now, its interests are against the Taliban and all these groups. And they don't need Pakistan for their operations. So yes, the truth will come out, but they will not go into the past. They will focus on the present meaning ever since their plans for withdrawal from Afghanistan started. But I think Pakistan is now set to face the music, because friends of mine in Washington tell me that there is bipartisan consensus between Democrats and Republicans to deal with this issue as one national issue of terrorism, and of shame that they did not act all these years.
What happens now? Like Washington, what can Washington do now? And what do you think are going to be the far-reaching ramifications of this confession? It talks about Pakistan Army, it talks about ISI. He has spilled beans, and he's there. He's talking to media.
You know, with the Americans, what counts is evidence which the CIA and the FBI produce, and their investigations produce, and their military intelligence produce, and comes out as a congressional report. And right now in America, the bitterness against Pakistan for its dual cheating of pretending to be an ally by arming the enemy. For 30 years they did it. They'll pay a price, that's certain. What it will be, remains to be seen, because I think that is where diplomatically India has to be active, because we suffered as much as they did, primarily because they looked the other way.
Okay, and especially after Quad, do you think this could you know, it's more isolation, and some sort of isolation for Pakistan, because Quad has consolidated further. Joint action on terrorism is also what's happening in Afghanistan was also featured, in fact, in the Quad groupings discussions, in their bilaterals, etc. UNGA, India talked tough on terror. Post that, situation in China, equations between the respective Quad countries vis-a-vis China, China's backing to Pakistan, will all those things that are happening right now, and Afghanistan continues to make international headlines for wrong reasons.
Well, the Chinese are a totally separate issue. There we've been on the same sort of wavelength with the Americans for some time, and with other countries also. Because you see, Chinese aggression is not just against India. It is against 17 countries on its land and maritime boundaries. And each one of these 17 neighbors has one complaint or another about Chinese intrusions into their territory. So China is a land grabber, whether it is on its east or its west or on its maritime frontiers. And the other thing it does is that it gives loans which countries can't repay and then takes over parts of the country. It's happened in East Africa, and it's happened in Sri Lanka, where they've taken over the strategic Hambantota port. So there, and don't forget, there is a China-Pakistan nexus.
Yes, that's why I asked you that question.
What you are facing
yes.
is not Pakistan and China separately, but you have been facing, and we have been slow in admitting it, a China a nexus. Pakistan's nuclear weapons, their missiles are all of Chinese design. Their weapons they still continue to get, when the only ones they can afford are from China. So yes, I would presume that there would be that same level of intelligence cooperation between Pakistan and China.
Okay.
And we have to be.
One final question, sir. As we are talking to you, we're also beaming the visuals of the amount of, I mean, the huge cache of arms and ammunitions that have been recovered. This 10-day long encounter. I mean, this was huge, which meant that they were planning something big. At least 7 of them have been eliminated, and this one has been captured alive.
Well, this is nothing compared to the arms and ammunition which the Taliban now have in their hands. With the interior minister who controls all this, the Sirajuddin Haqqani, very keen on pushing terrorists into Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes.
So I think the summer will tell as to how much this will be exploited. There is a huge political pressure and diplomatic pressure which limits Pakistan. So let's see, we'll have to wait for April, May before really we get exposed to what is
I'm tempted to ask one more question as a last question. You've been India's envoy to Pakistan also, sir. By your experience, now that Pakistan and this Pakistan under Imran Khan, who described the Taliban as innocent tribes and nothing less, nothing more. But now, you think now is the time that Pakistan has been actually pushed to mat?
I don't want to be, please. I don't want to be disrespectful to a neighboring head of government. But I can tell you, in Pakistan, he is known as Taliban Khan. And the fact of the matter is that he is very chummy with these groups. But he has long been a protege of the military, and he is known not to particularly love India, even in the days when he played cricket against us, captaining Pakistan. So with Imran Khan, I think you would have one civilian government which is totally in sync with its military, and in fact perhaps more militant than its military.
Yes, he may not love India, and we don't really are bothered whether he loves us or not, but then he should first sort his own backyard for Imran Khan. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Parthasarathy, for joining us and, putting this big breakthrough for our forces in perspective, and also the highlights of that report, US Congress's report on terror. And before giving some other news, top news in World Today, we'll give you headlines once again. A quick look at the top stories on World Today. A Pakistani terrorist captured alive by the Indian Army during live encounter in Jammu Kashmir's Uri sector confesses his association with Lashkar-e-Toiba and the role of Pakistani handlers. Fumio Kishida all set to become the Prime Minister of Japan. Kishida wins race to lead Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Kishida clinches runoff against Vaccine Minister Taro Kono with 257 votes to 170. China witnesses massive power supply crisis. Goldman Sachs estimates that 44% of China's industrial activity has been hit by the power shortages. North Korea confirms the projectile fired off its east coast on Tuesday as a newly developed hypersonic missile, calls on the US and South Korea to scrap their double standards on weapons programs to restart diplomatic talks. And Lionel Messi scores his first goal for PSG to beat Manchester City in an enthralling Champions League group game. Debutant Sheriff Tiraspol upstages 13-time European champions Real Madrid. Now let's talk about Japan. Former Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida has clinched ruling Liberal Democratic Party leadership race. It's a win that virtually ensures that he is going to succeed Yoshihide Suga as Prime Minister within days to come. And in an acceptance speech, Kishida vowed to lead transformed party in a general election due within weeks, and he will continue to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, which has battered Japan's economy. Kishida defeated former Defense and Foreign Minister Taro Kono, seen as an outspoken maverick, in a second-round runoff vote. Two female contenders, Sane Takaichi, 60 years of age, and Seiko Noda, 61 years of age, they dropped out after the first round. As a new leader of the Liberal Democratic Party, Kishida is certain to be elected the next Prime Minister on Monday in Parliament, where his party and coalition partner control the House. And now let's have a look at the political journey of Fumio Kishida, who is set to become the new Prime Minister of Japan.
Japan's former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida has won the ruling party's leadership election, virtually ensuring that he will become the country's next Prime Minister. The 65-year-old won the party's leadership vote, defeating popular vaccine chief Taro Kono. This is not the first time Kishida has contested in the party's leadership election. Last year, he lost to Yoshihide Suga in the Liberal Democratic Party's presidential race. A 9-term member of the House of Representatives, Kishida was also a close aide of Shinzo Abe, Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister, and was in charge of foreign affairs for more than 4 years under his leadership. A graduate from the School of Law, Waseda University, Kishida has served in various ministerial roles. He became Minister of Consumer Affairs and Minister for Space Policy in the year 2008 in the Fukuda cabinet. In 2007, he had been appointed as Minister of State for Okinawa and Northern Territories Affairs, Science and Technology Policy, Quality of Life Policy, and Regulatory Reform. Kishida was elected to the House of Representatives for the first time in the year 1993 and became Parliamentary Vice Minister for Construction 6 years later in the year 1999. He was again chosen as the Parliamentary Vice Minister for Construction in the year 2000. Before entering active politics, he served as secretary to a member of the House of Representatives. As Kishida is said to become the new Prime Minister of Japan, it is to be seen if he will deliver on his promise of spending big on new pandemic stimulus and tackling income inequality. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, US President Joe Biden has released a video of first ever in-person Quad Leaders Summit. Biden said that they are committed to their partnership and to an Indo-Pacific region that is free, open, inclusive and resilient. He also said that proud to say that we are making excellent progress. And remember on September 24th, President Biden had hosted Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga at the White House for the first ever in-person Leaders Summit of the Quad.
I'm honored to welcome Prime Minister Morrison, Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Suga for the first in-person meeting of the Quad we've had. We're four major democracies with a long history of cooperation. We know how to get things done, and we are up to the challenge. I'm proud to say that we're making excellent progress. You ready to go to work? Absolutely.
Well, U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, has said that the U.S. has missed warning signs about the coming failure of leadership and will in its Afghan allies that ultimately led to their collapse and the Taliban takeover on 15th of August. Milley made the remarks in testimony to the Senate Armed Services Committee, where he and U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin were questioned by Republicans and Democrats about the chaotic aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal. Republican lawmakers accused President Biden of lying about recommendations from his military that some troops should be kept in the country. And even Biden's Democrats expressed frustration with the withdrawal that left U.S. troops dead and American citizens behind.
Senator, that we missed, frankly. We had some indicators, but we didn't have the full, wholesome assessment of leadership, morale, and will. There were some units, and I don't want to say negative things about these guys. There's 60, 70,000 of the Afghan service that were killed in action over the last 20 years. And many units did fight at the very end. But the vast majority put their weapons down and melted away in a very, very short period of time. I think that has to do with will, leadership, and I think we still need to try to figure out exactly why that was. And I have some suggestions, but I'm not settled on them yet. But we clearly missed that. I think one of the key factors we missed it for was we pulled our advisors off 3 years ago.
And shifting focus from US to Germany, the process towards the formation of a coalition government has started as the centre-left Social Democrats, or SPD, led by Olaf Scholz, claims a narrow win over incumbent Chancellor Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union, or CDU. The SPD took a narrow lead with 25.7% of the vote, which was followed by the bloc led by Merkel's conservative Christian Democrats with 24.1%, their lowest vote share. The Greens won 14.8%, their best performance in a national poll, while the Liberals, the pro-business Free Democrats, took 11.5%. Olaf Scholz has claimed win and shown interest in working with Greens. Armin Laschet, the Conservative leader, has also promised to put every effort to ensure a CDU-led government that leaves the Greens and the Liberals as kingmakers. Now, since the Socialists and the Conservatives, currently coalition partners in the Merkel government, will not be together again, the next government is set to be the three-way coalition. And now let's take a look at the updates on COVID-19 front from around the world. The global COVID-19 case tally has crossed 23 crore mark, and with over 23 crore 35 lakh cases of COVID cases being reported so far, more than 21 crore have recovered, while over 47 lakh 78,000 have lost lives to the virus globally. The United States remains the worst hit nation. So far, over 4 crore 40 lakh cases have been reported just across the US. The death toll in states has surpassed 7 lakh, with more than 7 lakh 11,000 people having lost their lives to the virus already. And the head of the World Trade Organization on Tuesday said that the low COVID-19 vaccination rate of around 4% in Africa is devastating, adding that trade should help address vaccine inequity. Director General Gozi Okonjo remarks came at the opening session of the Geneva-based trade event. Also voicing his concerns at the event was South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. He said a waiver on patents was needed to save millions of lives during the pandemic. The WTO began discussions on a waiver to intellectual property rules for COVID-19 products about a year ago, but several countries with strong pharmaceutical industries, including host Switzerland, remain opposed. Also at the event, the WTO said that it expected all countries, including China, to collaborate in the second phase of the probe into the origins of the virus.
While nearly 60% of people in developed countries are fully vaccinated, in Africa the figure is barely 4%. This is devastating for the lives and livelihoods of Africans. It is morally unacceptable and, as new variants spread, a threat to the health and economic recovery everywhere.
This is not the time just to be unidimensionally focused on just profit. This is the time to save lives.
And we now take a look at what else is making news around the world.
North Korea has claimed that it successfully tested a new hypersonic missile called Hwasong-8. The state media said the new missile was one of the 5 most important new weapon systems laid out in its 5-year military development plan. They called the new missile a strategic weapon, which usually means it has nuclear capabilities. North Korea has been steadily developing its weapon systems amid an impasse over talks aimed at dismantling its nuclear and ballistic missile arsenals in return for US sanctions relief. Taking an update from Spain's Camber Veja volcanic eruption, red-hot lava from a volcano that devastated the Spanish island of La Palma. Lava has been flowing down the volcano's western flank towards the sea since September 19. It has destroyed almost 600 houses and banana plantations in La Palma, which neighbors Tenerife in the Canary Islands archipelago of the North African coast. With revolutionary laws being formulated across the world, hundreds in El Salvador waved green flags to demand to loosen the country's strict abortion laws. The demonstrators marched through the capital San Salvador en route to the Congress on Tuesday. The protest consisted mostly of women as they met as part of the International Safe Abortion Day, being marked across the world. The Salvadoran protesters sought to pressure the country's legislators to ease one of the world's strictest abortion laws, which prohibits termination of pregnancy in cases of rape and even if the mother's life is at risk. With the world going through a sea of changes in terms of climate change and due to the global warming, there are many who have raised their concerns over the future of the world in lieu of the climate changes. Climate activist Greta Thunberg addressed delegates at a Milan Youth for Climate conference. An angered Thunberg slammed several world leaders, claiming there has not been enough action and only words. Words that sound great but so far haven't led to any action. World Today Desk, DD India.
And on World Today, another short breather. Will be back.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. As the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation, do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask Up India.
You're watching DD India, World Today, Voice of Billion Voices. And now let's talk about soccer action. Lionel Messi scored his first Paris Saint-Germain goal in stunning fashion as they beat Manchester City in an enthralling Champions League group game. Messi, making his 4th appearance for PSG since leaving Barcelona, ran from the halfway line before playing a 1-2 with Kylian Mbappe and leaving Edison rooted to the spot with a lovely 20-yard shot. That was his 7th goal in the 5 Champions League games against teams managed by Pep Guardiola, his former Barcelona boss, and his 7th goal against the City. And now here are the stories that are making news but not headlines in Beyond Headlines.
No Time to Die, the 25th James Bond title, had its world premiere at London's Royal Albert Hall on Tuesday evening. The glitzy, star-studded event welcomed Daniel Craig, Lashana Lynch along with several fellow cast members. Britain's Prince Charles, his wife Camilla, son Prince William and wife Kate were among the guests who attended the premiere of the James Bond film. The film has been delayed 3 times since its original April 2020 slot, as cinemas across the world were forced to shut their doors due to COVID-19 pandemic. A 11.5 feet tall puppet depicting a 9-year-old Syrian refugee girl arrived in Geneva as part of an 8,000-kilometer walk across Europe to raise awareness of the plight of young refugees. Little Amal, which means hope in Arabic, started her journey on 27th July in Gaziantep, Turkey, near the Syrian border. The puppet depicts a refugee girl in search of safety and her mother who never returned from her attempt to find food. The Handspring Puppet Company created her as part of an effort to raise awareness about the plight of unaccompanied refugee children. In Japan, a turtle found on a runway at Narita Airport. Traffic disrupted, causing flights to delay. The reptile was spotted by a pilot. It was then safely captured by airport staff with a net and measured to be about 30 centimeters long and weighed about 2 kilograms. It is unclear how the turtle ended up at the airport, but media reported it may have come from a nearby reservoir. Christian Dior showcased a burst of colorful 1960s and 70s flavored mini dresses as crowd return at the Paris Fashion Week. Dozens of brands will show their collections to in-person audiences in the French capital through 5th October, capping a month that has seen the return of celebrity-packed fashion events and screaming fans to New York, London and Milan following months of pandemic disruptions. Models circled round a runway set up to resemble a board game and decorated with artwork from Rome-based artist Anna Paparatti that broadcast messages infused with irony. From Marty McFly's hoverboard in Black to the Future Part 2 to a stormtrooper helmet worn in Return of the Jedi, a massive selection of movie memorabilia worth $7.5 million will be auctioned in London in November. Over 1,000 lots made up of costumes, props and other items are expected to fetch more than $7.52 million at the auction that will take place between 9 and 11 November. The auction will be carried out by film and television memorabilia company Propsto. France's traditional La Bise greeting, a kiss on each cheek, is slowly making a comeback as the coronavirus recedes. Bestowed on family, friends or anyone else in an informal setting, La Bise was de facto banned when the pandemic was at its peak. With more than 70% of the population fully vaccinated, people can now once more be seen planting what was usually just air kisses by a kissing sound on each other's cheek. In South Korea, a new theme park has been constructed on jondo Island in Chonjun in the middle of Uhma Lake. This Legoland has a 59-meter tall observatory tower that offers a full view of the lake. There are splendid Lego works on display, such as this elephant made with thousands of Lego blocks. It is Korea's first Legoland and the 10th in one globally. The park is 280,000 square meters in size. It will open on 5th of May next year when Children's Day is celebrated in Korea. Amazon has unveiled a household canine-like robo called Astro, designed to take up tasks such as home monitoring, setting up routines and reminders while roaming around the house. The device, which has digital eyes on a rotating screen mounted on wheels, is available at an introductory invite-only price of $999 with regular price of $1,449.
On World Today, we take another short break. Don't go away.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Thanks for staying with us on World Today. Now it's time for our history segment where we look into the major developments that took place on this day way back in past.
On this day in 1923, Britain began to govern Palestine under a mandate from the League of Nations. On this day in 1938, Germany, France, Britain and Italy signed the Munich Agreement in which German-speaking part of Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland, was surrendered to Nazi Germany. In 1941, on this day, German occupiers killed 33,771 Jewish men, women and children in the Babi Yar ravine near Kiev in over 2 days. Many people were killed in the first nuclear waste disaster to cause large loss of life on this day in 1957. An explosion at the Mayak chemical combine in Russia formed a nuclear cloud 5 miles or about 8 kilometers wide. The NASA shuttle Discovery was launched on this day in 1988. It was the first shuttle mission since the explosion of Challenger in 1986. On this day in 2002, Afghan athletes returned to top international competition for the first time in 8 years as the 14th Asian Games opened in Busan, South Korea. And on this day in 2007, cooks prepared the world's biggest green salad in Spain.
And after Today in History, it's time to wrap up this edition of World Today. But before we do so, here's a quick recap of the top headlines on World Today. A Pakistani terrorist captured alive by the Indian Army during a live encounter in Jammu Kashmir's Uri sector confesses his association with Lashkar-e-Toiba and the role of Pakistani handlers. Fumio Kishida all set to become the Prime Minister of Japan. Kishida wins race to lead Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Kishida wins runoff against Vaccine Minister Taro Kono with 257 votes to 170. China witnesses major power supply crisis. Goldman Sachs estimates that 44% of China's industrial activity has been hit by power outages. North Korea confirms a projectile fired off its east coast on Tuesday as a newly developed hypersonic missile, calls on the US and South Korea to scrap their double standards on weapons programs to restart diplomatic talks. And Lionel Messi scores his first goal for PSG to beat Manchester City in an enthralling Champions League group game. Debutants Sheriff Tiraspol upstages 13-time European champions Real Madrid. And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of World Today. We'll be back tomorrow 6 o'clock with the top international stories. World Today, your window to the world. Thanks so much for tuning in to us. Namaskar.